You're either the hardest worker in the room or you fail. Like, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. You don't. There's no options. It's like my brother and I have some really good talks about this. Like, he has a big banknote, for their ranch. There is no I get to go home and take a sick day. There is I owe X amount of money at the end of the year. I got to make that bank payment. How do I make that happen? Okay. I'm sick today. I need to find someone to do what I can't do. I need to have a helper. I need to have a reliable backup. You have to find a way to make things happen. And so when you're a business owner, you don't get to bitch about crunch. You just figure shit out. Like, you find a way to make it happen. Um, if you can't do it, then someone else has to do it. So, yeah, the owners. So yeah, it's a different thing. Yeah, but that's a gross exaggeration of the discussion, Mithril. Like, Bobby Kotick as the CEO, like, that's a gross over exaggeration of what I'm talking about. Like, that's not even in the same conversation. Because there is a major issue with pay disparity in, like, the U.S. and those markets. But I will also tell you this: as much as we all love to hate on Bobby Kotick, as much as we love to hate on him, the employees who come in and just punch a clock and work their 8 hours a day and want to go home and never work crunch, they don't want to work overtime, and they don't ever want to risk anything, there's a reason they are only ever going to make $40,000 a year. So CEOs and the suites, like the C-suite, they do, and I'm not talking gross overcompensation here, but I am speaking, generally speaking, C-suites deserve to be compensated at a higher level than the average person who works at the company, because they are risking more than the average person, because they have legal obligations, and that if they don't fulfill, they can end up in court, they can go to jail, there's a lot of repercussions if you are a C-suite executive for a company, related to if the business fails or succeeds. Which makes the compensation higher. We're not talking gross compensation. We're not talking not talking the gross overcompensation and those type of things. But I can tell you this much: as a business owner, I definitely deserve to be paid 10 times more than the average person who's just going to work for a wage. I absolutely deserve a minimum of 10 times more, because I have 10 times the risk. I don't get to take sick days. I don't get mental health days. I have legal obligations that could put me in jail. I have responsibilities that can end up with me getting accused of fraud, false advertisement. Like, all of these things I shoulder the responsibility of as the business owner. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the people who complain about, oh, I had to work some overtime. Bitch, please. You get to take a sick day whenever you want. I'm being very exaggerative here, but it's like... But yeah, we're not talking about the Bobby Kodaks of the world right now, though. We're talking about just normal business owners, not these guys that are making $250 million a year contracts, and that's a different thing altogether. That is a different thing. That is a plague that needs to be fixed. Like, that's the reason why the thing that happened with the healthcare executive, was that earlier this year, or was that late last year when that happened? When that guy got unalived, the, like, big CEO of a healthcare company in the U.S. No one had sympathy for him. Nobody. Why? Because the guy was making $250 million a year while denying genuinely sick people health care. That's the scum of the earth. That's something that, sorry, that's karma. Like, Mellerex says, my mother owns a restaurant and she just had to deal with fake receipts for payments. Yep. Oh, you know what the big thing is here is people who use counterfeit bills. So every place you go that you go to pay cash for, they'll have like a scanner and they'll run the scanner and then they'll hold up the bill and they have to check bills because counterfeit bills are a big deal because people are shitty. And if you're the business owner, you have to deal with that. You know, that's another thing where it's like, if you're the business owner, if I own a restaurant, like Mellerex is just saying, if I as the business owner own a restaurant and someone comes in and orders $1,000 worth of food and pays me with a fake bills, or they pay me through credit card fraud or something, and then I'm on the hook for that $1,000. That means if maybe I don't make that much money at my restaurant, maybe my restaurant is middling and I've only got 3 employees. Where am I now? All of a sudden, that $1,000 is like the paycheck for those 3 people today. Well, guess what? I'm still responsible for those 3 people's paycheck, and I'm still responsible for restocking the refrigerator to make up for the food that someone just stole from me by not paying me legitimate currency. So I, as the business owner, I'm the one who is at risk for all of that, and I have a legal obligation to buy more food and pay my employees. I deserve compensation for that. I deserve to be compensated way more than the waiter or the person who's the busboy or the dishwasher, because I'm the one who has the legal responsibility and the financial responsibility to take care of all that, no matter the fact that it was somebody else's fuck up. And that's what I'm talking about here. We're not talking Bobby Kotick levels of gross overcompensation. We're talking about, as a business owner, it takes a different mind. It takes a
And let's
different mind to be a
begin.
business owner. I would love to take a mental health day. I can now, but, you know, thankfully I don't work a job where I need to take mental health days. Although I will say the trolls can be pretty shitty some days, but I still make money, so it's at the end of the day I still win. That's true, Devon. You also run the risk of getting in trouble at the federal level if you try to take that money to the bank and you didn't know that it was counterfeit, right? Those are the risks as a business owner. And like, there are a lot of people who don't understand those types of risk and they will yell from the bottom, "It's not fair. It's not fair that person's making more money than me. It's not fair." Yes, it is. It's 100% fair. What risk are you taking by showing up to a job where you can call in sick? Like, and I get it. It's there's nothing wrong with just having a job and going to work and making a fair wage for whatever it is that you enjoy doing. There's nothing wrong with that. But you also lose the right to complain about like the people higher up the food chain making more money than you if you're not willing to take the risks that are associated with that higher wage. And again, we're not talking the Bobby Kotick CEOs of major American corporations who make 5 million times more than what the average worker at the company makes. But, you know, someone making $250,000 a year as the manager of a company versus someone making $50,000 a year as an employee of the company, that is in my book, that is a pretty fair compensation level for the level of risk and responsibility the person making $250,000 a year is putting on the table compared to the person who shows up for work every day and can clock out whenever they want. Um, but there is a cycle of fairness that has to exist for everybody. Yes, Erudite, I am absolutely in favor of wages being capped. I absolutely believe that we should have wage caps for C-level suites, for C-suite executives. There should be a wage cap for sure. None of this $250 million a year salary when everybody else is only making 60 grand a year. No. There's no voiceovers for this quest. This is a bug. Not a big deal. I've played enough Rogue Trader over the years to survive without voiceovers. Alright, so we've hopefully convinced her to come heal the people. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, corruption is a legit thing. If you can't afford to pay your staff a living wage, you shouldn't be in business. I can agree. I can get behind that for sure. One of the worst things I've ever seen is like in the US, you can get away with not paying your waiters a livable wage. Like how is that legal? I'll never understand that. Because of tips. Like you're not actually, which is why I'm so happy that tips for the most part don't exist outside of the US. Like most countries pay their waiters a livable wage and they don't rely on tips. But in the US, it's like, we'll give you $2 an hour and you're supposed to make the rest up in tips. And it's like, Jesus, that's so corrupt.
So, this is what it feels like to be whole again. It's strange. Like I've been walking in a fog all these years. Blind to what I'd lost.
The problem with livable wage is it just depends on where you live.
The light is so clear.
That's a huge discrepancy. That's why we don't have a universal income internationally. Because cost of living in Russia is different than the UK, is different than the US, is different than Canada, is different than Lithuania.
They were my strength. First, I will return to the people of Kunat. They deserve the priestess I promised to be. Not the bitter shell I became. You have done more for me than I ever could have asked
in the perfect Star Trek utopia, we have a universal income where everyone, in that case, Star Trek utopia, no one makes any money because we've moved beyond capitalistic needs. But the concept of a universal income,
no, you didn't.
Where everyone is equal, is a beautiful utopian idea.
To carry this forward.
But
thank you, truly.
It's not feasible with where we are as a species at the moment.
I will face it with open arms and a whole heart.
So my wife spent her whole career in the service industry, as a waitress, as a hostess, as a check-in person at hotels. So and as a cashier at like a restaurant. So my wife that's all she ever did was work in the hospitality industry. And believe me, I understand the shit that those people go through, and the way they are treated. Her sister as well, her sister that moved to Cancun. But her sister still, like I said, she worked there for like 10 years, put a bunch of money in the savings, and then went back home and started her rental properties, and that's what she does now. But like I never worked in the hospitality industry myself, but I can speak on it with some authority because my wife did. Dude, what is up with this dude? Do I have to like get him when his shield's down? Nope, I got him that time. I think I have to hit him in the head. Wow, shields are pretty impressive in this game. Like, he 100% blocked all of my arrows. Exactly, erudite. We can't have universal equality when people inherently desire to be superior in some way. Well, there's also human nature. We still would live with the issue of human nature, meaning that if 10 people get paid the same amount of money to do the same job, and the job is not skill based. So a good example I've always used is if 10 people are hired to sweep a floor, and I sweep the floor 5 times faster, and my floor is 5 times cleaner than the other 9 people, but yet I'm only making the same amount of money as the other 9 people, I have lost the incentive to do that ever again. I'm never going to bother with making the floor as clean as or doing it as fast as I did the first time, because I realize that there's no value in doing it quicker or better, because I'm being compensated the same as the person who doesn't do it as fast or as good. That is the inherent problem with universal incomes, and that's one of the issues we face as a society, because there's no incentive to work hard if you're not being compensated for that um, effort. Where did all these guys come from? Oh, I finally reached I finally reached encumbered status. Um, Hang on, I gotta scroll up because you guys are talking about what's a fair livable wage. Yeah, that's an impossible question to answer, because what's a livable wage depends entirely on where you live. Yeah, because like I could tell you that where I live, the livable wage is not something that I would ever consider working for. But that's because my brain says I'm from this other place where the livable wage is much higher because the cost of living is much higher. So I don't want to work for what's the livable wage here because the livable wage there is that much more. But that's brainwashing, essentially. But because I don't live there per se. So that's the problem when you start talking about livable wage. Man, that just depends on where you live. And then there's like, even like in the US, and this is the same for the EU, every country in the EU and every state in the US and every province in Canada has a different cost of living associated with it. So like Alaska, as an example, in the US is way more expensive to live in than Missouri. And the reason is because it's so remote that it costs a ton of money to import all of the food and the produce and the things that they need for the society to function. So the costs to take everything up there, the cost of gas, the cost of diesel, the cost of transportation to get the goods to Alaska, drive the cost of living up. So the cost of living is so much higher in Alaska. The livable wage in Alaska is much higher than it is for someone in Missouri. And then if you start going to like Argentina versus Lithuania, etc., then you're still talking like the cost of living is dramatically different where we live. And so that's an impossible conversation to have, because we don't have a universal cost of living or a universal wage because of all the disparities that we have between different governments and tax rates. And that's why that like Star Trek Utopia is a great concept, but goddamn, I don't know how we would ever be able to get there. Like, I really don't know how we would get there, because it would require a fundamental shift of how society works. And I just don't think that we're there yet. Let's drop some of these. I don't need 2 shovels. I definitely don't need 2 fishing poles. Yep, universal health care is also a thing that can drive the costs up. All of that is true. Someone said something earlier like we should like all old people should be taken care of. I absolutely agree with that. If you have put in your time and you have benefited society and you've worked your ass off, like you deserve to be taken care of in your old age. You deserve dignity. You deserve a retirement. You deserve a pension. Like a good example of this is my grandmother was never allowed to retire. She worked until the day she died. Why? Because her pension didn't pay enough for her to live in the country where she lived. And she lived in Missouri, which is a low, relatively low cost of living in the United States as a general whole. But her government pension combined with her factory pension, because she did factory work, both of her pensions combined did not pay enough for her to pay for her basic cost of living. She ended up having to go live with family members in her last few years because she couldn't afford to live on her own with her pension. How fucked up is that? You put your whole life into the system. You pay your taxes, you pay your dues, you work your whole fucking life. You're 70 years old and you're not even allowed to like take time. You have to still work part-time to pay your bills because your pension doesn't cover enough. That's fucked up. Yeah, Jay, I think I think you're not wrong. I think it would require some sort of global catastrophe to get us to the Star Trek point. Change of heart. Man, I got a quest here a minute ago for something related to those undead we were killing. Huh. What's a myth? I don't know what you're referring to, Mithril. Erudite says, do you count taxes under livable wage? Ooh, is a tithe a part of a livable wage? That's another good question. Yeah, because some countries have like a theocracy. Dude, Hector, I have a funny story to tell about this. So I remember I had been living in Bulgaria for a few years, and I had come back to visit, and we were up in the highlands of Colorado, up in the mountains, and I went to this barbecue on the 4th of July. It was like some friends of my parents. They were sheep farmers way up in the mountains, and they had a big multi-million-dollar sheep operation. And I'd been living in Bulgaria for a couple of years at that point, and Bulgaria has a social healthcare system on top of a private healthcare system if you want to pay into it. And so I had gotten my teeth cleaned and a crack taken care of for like 20 US dollars was what I paid out of pocket. And I had gotten some other stuff, gone to the doctor and some other stuff, all covered under my social medicine, under the taxes that I was paying, right? And so I went to this barbecue, and people were talking. This is like 2004, 2005, and people are talking about. There's 34 people in the garage. We're all having a barbecue. Everybody's drinking, and somehow the topic got on like the cost of healthcare and stuff. And I piped up that I was like, well, I just got my teeth taken care of for like 20 bucks, and the cost to do the same thing in the US without insurance and stuff is like $300-400. Um, and I got it done for 20 bucks, and I was like, and I went and got this, that, and that done. And having spent a couple of years there, I can really see the value in a social medical system that's done the right way. Dude, you could have heard a pin drop. Like the whole garage went completely silent, and all of a sudden I hear somebody in the back go, "Is he a communist?" Like that's the level of brainwashing that has gone on in some places where they are so hook, line, and sinker think that private medicine is the only way to go. And it's like, you guys do realize that the vast majority of the world doesn't do it that way. The tithe question is a really good one, though, because, like, in Catholic countries, is the tithe considered part of the livable wage discussion? Because you're expected to give that 10% on top of your taxes. Like, that's a legit, interesting thing to consider. I may have to wait for this guy. Yeah, he won't talk to me. Ooh, I can level up. Man, I don't know where else I want to spend my points right. Oh, I guess I have one more point I could put in the bow. And then I think I've got all the bow skills that I want for now. I have to start thinking about where else do I want to spend my points. Come here.
Yes. And here are the remains of Sir Valen himself. Justice finally caught up with him. He was a scoundrel, a drunkard, and a libertine. And an aristocrat too. At the Camelot court, he plotted, seduced, and stabbed people in the back. Literally.
Nothing wrong with a little seduction.
Eventually, he was betrayed himself. And he ended up here, as a common bandit. Or rather, your handful of coins for his head.
Yeah, let's not even get into the discussion of, like, in the U.S. how you can have a religious entity that is completely tax-free. And so you have these billionaire churches, like, it's so fucked up, man. God wants me to have this plane. God wants me to have this fleet of Mercedes. Buy my subscription plan and you too can be blessed just like me. I need to start a church is what I need to do. That sounds like the next step of my evolution. I need to start a religion. That's what L. Ron Hubbard did. Like, Scientology literally is the brain creation of a science fiction author. It is the funniest shit ever. Ever. Alright, I think we're gonna go finish the Men Here rights.
Anything else?
I loved the South Park episode they did on Scientology. That was that was amazing as what that was. Ouch! I'm gonna have the Scientologists after me now. Okay, I don't know how to get over there, so... Looks like we can maybe take this path. Oh! No. I forgot I needed something very important before we leave. I need to do a cell run. Because I have a bunch of stuff, and I was just overweight a minute ago. I don't think I can sell to her.
You're here. Speak your piece or...
Who is a vendor near here?